Hey there, rock and roll fans. Welcome to another episode of the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast, recorded just off Abbey Road here in London. And this week, Action Jackson and I are going to shift gears a little bit. We've been doing a lot of hard rock and heavy metal lately, and we're going to talk about an American band. That's right, not a British band, as most of our episodes have been about so far, but an American band that have set all sorts of sales records, produced tons of hits, created an all-time rock and roll anthem, and are scheduled to play London this summer. And that's the Eagles, the California band that redefined country and rock music throughout the 70s. Had a lot of slower, ballad-like songs in the early 70s, but then in the mid-70s, they turned into a hard rock band. And that's what we're going to focus on, particularly the year 1976, where early in the year, they released Eagles' Greatest Hits Volume 1, which has gone on to be the highest-selling album in America of all time. And later that year, they released Hotel California. The title track alone deserves recognition by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But the whole album was a real triumph for a band that had been working really hard and then found unprecedented success in 1976 and 77 thanks to the release of these two records. Yes, they fought a lot. Yes, they had band member changes. Yes, they made a lot of money and lived to the excess of the 70s. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How Don Henley, the drummer, singer, and songwriter, along with Glenn Frey, guitar player, singer, and songwriter, led the Eagles through their many incarnations and into international success in 1976. Now, before we get going, let us know if you've got any suggestions on how we can make the show better, which bands or albums you want to hear about. Tweet us at ugly_werewolf, or check out our past episodes at uglyamericanwerewolf.libsyn.com. But for now, sit back, let's jump into the old time machine to 1976 and learn more about the Eagles here on The Wolf.
So we're going to talk about the Eagles' greatest hits, 1971 to 75, and Hotel California.
Right.
Right?
Which both came out in 1976.
Yeah, and I remember you said, well, we were talking about this last time. Well, the Hotel California is not on the greatest hits, right?
Right.
But it was for me, because you know that uncle, the cool uncle that you think to yourself, I bet he smokes pot. Never seen him smoke pot, but I bet he smokes pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had one of those. And he had a milk carton full of, or a milk crate full of LP vinyl.
Ah.
So I was at his house one time. He lived down in Miami, and he didn't smoke pot. Come on now. And so what I did was I took a Maxell tape, a 90-minute, and I did Eagles' Greatest Hits on one side, and then Hotel California on the other side. So I had like a super greatest hits. And so if you listen to that whole thing through, because I mean, pretty much, let's face it, Hotel California, it, for the most part, is a greatest hits record also. Pretty close.
Absolutely. It's an extraordinary album. And the title track with the dueling guitars at the end is like a top 5, top 10 all-time great rock and roll classic anthem. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic.
Now, can I pose this thought?
All right.
Are the Eagles the closest thing we're going to get in the United States to the Beatles?
Oh, man.
And I know you. Well, now hold on. I know you're going to flip out and say the Eagles, but hold on.
All right.
First of all, I said the United States. Second of all, you had. So let's just talk about Hotel California real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So you had Don Felder, Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Randy Meisner, and Joe Walsh. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you've got all of these tracks on here. The only one that Frey sings on is New Kid in Town.
Mm-hmm.
Henley does most of the deal. But let's go down to the bottom here. Try and Love Again, written by Randy Meisner, sung by Randy Meisner, like George Harrison, right? And then you had the Pretty Maids All in a Row, Walsh and Joe Vitale, sung by Joe Walsh. He did it on his own. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that musically they're the same. I'm not going to tell you that. But you had a band with 4 legitimate lead singers in it, all writing music. I don't think there's another American band like that.
Okay, so to that point, I think your point is well taken, in that generally speaking, there's only 1 or maybe 2 singers in a band, even if other people can write songs. And usually there's a dominant songwriting force like a Lennon McCartney, as it was with Henley and Frey, and then the other guys could write songs. Now, Joe Walsh came to the band. This was his first album. It's the fifth Eagles record, Hotel California. But he had just joined the band.
Correct.
He had been in the James Gang, obviously, had been a solo artist. And his solo record, which I think was a very Walsh title, something like The Smoker You Drink, The Player You Get, was, yes, very, very Joe Walsh. It was also engineered and produced by Bill Simzik, who took over as the Eagles producer. So they had a producer that was similar. I think that Irving Azoff, who was their longtime manager, also managed Joe Walsh. So they said, okay, yeah, and they jammed with him before, so okay, we'll bring him in. Because Bernie Leadon, who had been in the Flying Burrito Brothers, was the original member. The original four were Henley and Fry, Randy Meisner, and Bernie Leadon. Randy Meisner had been in a band called Poco, and all four of them had backed up Linda Ronstadt.
And then if you want to talk about Poco, Timmy Schmidt then later came from Poco and grabbed a spot on the Eagles for the long run.
Yeah, I mean, took his place in Poco and then took his place in the Eagles. So you play bass and you sing really high, perfect, you're in. You want to get off a gig where you paid $140 a week? Okay, yeah, come join us. Yeah, we can get into all that for sure. So, but to kind of warm you up to what 1976 was, so they'd had these four successful albums, right? Their first album, The Eagles.
Well, I mean, if you want to start from the beginning, so Take It Easy, one of their biggest songs was off the first record. And granted, that was, Glenn Frey and Jackson Browne wrote that. So, I mean, that's a pretty big 1-2 punch there. But still, to me, it was, they kind of hit the ground running. The Eagles did. There wasn't like, well, they had that first album. No, right out of the gate, they were blowing and going.
They were, yeah. And Jackson Browne, I guess, had lived downstairs from Glenn Frey and had helped introduce them to David Geffen, who had just started Asylum Records before he became the huge
David Geffen.
Yes, the David Geffen that he is today. So he helped him get their record contract, and we'll talk about later famously how he got his royalties back, but the Eagles didn't when David Geffen sold Asylum. So that started some controversy. But Glenn had come from Detroit. He wanted to be a big star. Henley had come from Texas in a band called Shiloh, and Kenny Rogers produced their first album, and then they got together. They were part of Linda Ronstadt's backing band, but they had bigger ambitions than that. So yeah, they're buddies with Jackson Browne, who's helping them write songs. They're backing up Linda Ronstadt, who's a pretty big star. They get hooked up with David Geffen, who has some power, even though he was kind of young to the business. He had some power in getting some stuff done. And, he got them over to England to record with Glyn Johns to make their first couple of records, which was a pretty big deal for an unknown band, really. Pretty impressive. And you're right out of the gate, off their first album, Eagles, and it went fast. 72 was Eagles, 73 was Desperado, 74 On the Border, and 75 One of These Nights. So it was boom, 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 boom. Obviously touring in between all those.
Right. Which was, we've talked about this before, which was the way back then. I mean, either you were on tour or you were making a new record. That was it. Or you were in rehab, I guess. That's how it worked back in the 70s. There was no, we're going to take a little time. But no, you're not.
Yeah, and rehab was just, we'll give you a shot of something else to get you off, whatever it was that was ailing you, right? And we'll get you addicted to that instead, right?
Let's go.
So, I mean, yeah, Take It Easy, Witchy Woman, and Peaceful Easy Feeling. Now, look, these are kind of what I would call country songs. These aren't really rock songs. They're certainly not hard rock songs. The Eagles wanted to be that kind of mix of that Southern California country soft rock kind of thing. That was their intention out of the gate. And then the next album, Desperado, they released Tequila Sunrise. They did not release Desperado as a single. And then in 74, they decide they want to get a little more hard rocking. They have a big hit with Best of My Love, and then they add Don Felder to the band. Don Felder is from Gainesville, Florida, and he's buddies with Bernie Leadon, who was also from Gainesville. And I guess he had jammed with him, when they were in Boston opening for Yes back in 72. And that's when Glenn Frey named him Fingers Felder, because his fingers were all over the neck. So when they decided they wanted another guitar player to really rock out, they brought Felder in, and he played on Already Gone. It was released off On the Border. So he wasn't on the whole album, but he was on a couple songs, and he was on that song, and that is a rockin' tune. Certainly for the Eagles' first three albums, right?
I think too, with the addition of Felder, you had more of a lead guitar. I mean, I don't know if you put him in the same category, guitar god, but I mean, definitely more of a heavy hitter on guitars, not just chords and, strumming along to it. He could play the solos and jam out a little more.
See, to me, the addition of Felder is what made them a legitimate rock band. Henley had a great voice, and they did write good songs, he and Fry. And together they all played well. The harmonies between all their voices were very strong. Felder did not add to that. Felder was not much of a singer. And in the movie, Glenn Fry's pretty upfront about it. He goes, for all of his talents as a guitar player, Don Felder is not a singer. We can kind of get back to that later because that's part of why they broke up and got so mad at each other. Because like you say, there's fighting for which songs get on the album, and Randy maybe only gets one song an album, right, to sing on. And Don and Glenn write all the lyrics, but maybe if somebody comes in and adds the 2 lines, they have to give them a third of the royalties. Like, hey, add a word, get a third. That was kind of their motto.
That's what it always comes back to is I think you have to pick your poison on this because it was cool that all these guys could write songs, but I could only imagine, like you said, the constant butting of heads with, no, this is a great song. Yeah, it sure is. Go sit in the corner there. We'll let you know. Because, let's be real honest. It was, even though everybody did contribute, it was Fry and Henley. They were calling the shots in the band.
They're the leaders of the band. Yeah,
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
And not just because they have talent. Henley certainly had talent as a singer. There's no doubt about it. But it's not like Glenn Fry was this extraordinary guitar player or an extraordinary singer in his own right. What he was a type A alpha male who wanted to get stuff done. I think after the first couple records, they figured, hey, Bernie and Randy will do more because they're seasoned musicians. They were in real bands before this. They're going to do more. And maybe they weren't doing quite as much. So then Don and Glenn are like, okay, this was our idea. We formed this band and we're going to take the lead and we'll get the songwriting royalties anyway, right? So they did that. Then they did One of These Nights in 75, had a huge #1 hit with One of These Nights. Lion Eyes was big. And then Take It to the Limit, which is a Randy song where he sings that really high note towards the end there, which is really hard to hit. That's an enormous hit, right? So then they have to go tour the heck out of that. Well, that's starting to wear them down, and the record company wants the record faster and faster. So I feel like Irving Azoff's like, okay, we can buy some time for the next new record if we put out a greatest hits album, which I guess the Eagles were a little reluctant about until it came out. It came out in February of 76, so 45 years ago this month as we're recording it, and it was huge. It was the first album to get platinum status. They basically just invented platinum in 1976. Like, if you ship 1 million units, then you're platinum. And so it was the first one to get quote-unquote platinum.
This was an interesting record because it's one of those deals where everybody, and I mean everybody that you knew, had a copy of this somewhere. People that would never listen to quote-unquote hard rock have a copy of the Eagles' greatest hits. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was when I had that Maxell tape, my parents could listen to it like we were in the car. That's something we could all listen to together. Mm-hmm. Like it kind of bridged the gap. So even though they sold a zillion records, and it was kind of on the lighter side, but yet you still had a couple of songs that were a little bit cooler. So maybe the younger people could. It just hit all the high spots. Everybody could have a copy of this, and even if you didn't love every song on it, which I did, but that's how it went. There was something on there for everyone. So I don't think they did that intentionally, but unintentionally, this was the first monster record to be put out.
Yeah, and you said something to me when we were in college. I don't know if we were in the dorm room or we were in the car. Like, the Eagles, man, they just knew what they were doing. They just hit that sweet spot. Because think about it. They play them on classic rock. They play the Randy and the Tim Schmitz songs on the soft rock channels, right? They play it on adult contemporary channels. They play it on the country channels. If they have a hit, they play it on the pop channels, right? They play them on maybe not on R&B, but on every single other channel. You're going to hear an Eagles song during the course of the day.
Yeah, and you're familiar with them, and you know, of course you do. So, again, it's insane how, did you do that on purpose, or is this a happy accident? I don't know, but they had something where it was in the middle. I know if you're a big hard rock fan, you probably say, oh, that's weak, mm-hmm. But you could bridge that gap, because I know, like, my parents, like, they did not listen to hard rock at all, but this was something that we could all we didn't have to fight in the car about what we were going to listen to.
Right.
I don't want to listen to Peter, Paul, and Mary. Okay.
And my mother kind of liked country music a little bit. She had mm-hmm. She liked Anne Murray and Juice Newton, and she really liked the Eagles. And it was the one my dad could stomach, right? He's like, oh, I don't want to listen to that Anne Murray. I don't want to listen to that country stuff you like. The Eagles, like, yeah, okay, Eagles. And I do have the greatest hits cassette, which I think was maybe, part of the record club where you get 5 for a penny and then you have to buy 2 or 3 more at regular price.
Oh, I'm going to tell you that was one of mine too. The first grab where it was like you get 10 CDs. Well, the Eagles, they got to be in there somewhere. Right. I got to grab that, or tapes or whatever it was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So then that thing blows up, and in a month it goes platinum, and it continues to sell throughout the year of '76. Selling like 1 million copies a month, something sick like that. And for the most part, everybody gets a song on here. Take It Easy was Jackson Browne and Glenn Frey. Witchy Woman was Don Henley and Bernie Leadon. And then, they had some outside writers. Jack Tempchin wrote Already Gone from On the Border, and also did Peaceful, Easy Feeling. And I think he worked with Glenn Frey on his solo albums, like No Fun Allowed, once he broke up from the Eagles.
You're right, yeah.
He's a good songwriter, but J.D. Souther, who was a friend of theirs, co-wrote Best of My Love with Glenn and Don. So I don't think Felder had any rights on the first one, but on the first Greatest Hits album, that is. But Randy's on there, and so everyone's getting some songs on there, 10 songs. But, some of them are kind of country songs, and honestly, for a guy who's more of a hard rocker, these songs are kind of girl songs. Now, I understand you want girls to come to the concerts. If girls come up front stage of the concerts, you can get them backstage after the concert. It makes sense. But Lion Eyes, Take It Easy, Tequila Sunrise, Peaceful, Easy Feeling, these are not rock and roll. These are not hard rock songs. They're big hits.
Correct. But the one thing I always thought was cool on this record was that you had, there was no Joe Walsh, it wasn't there yet, but you had 3 distinct singers on the song with Take It to the Limit from Randy Meisner. I always thought that was cool because I'm always a fan of bands where it's not the same thing over and over and over again. Like once Journey got rid of Greg Raleigh, parted ways, whatever, it was all Steve Perry.
Right.
That's it. And I really like Same Way You Love Me from Journey, where the 2 of them are going back and forth. I'm like, man, if you could have worked it out, that would have been so cool to have 2, but that wasn't ever going to work out.
Well, didn't Raleigh sing Black Magic Woman in Santana?
Correct.
Yeah, he's great.
Show came out of the Santana band. But anyway, that's my point is that it's really cool when you can throw it to somebody else. You're like, wow, this guy can really sing too. Cool. It breaks that dynamic. And I think it makes the band stronger, but I think in the long run, anytime you have that dynamic, it's usually the person who's singing one song wants to be singing all the songs. And I always thought it was cool that Henley could sing and play the drums. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, he's not Neil Peart, but he's also, it's passable and he can sing.
He's a heck of a singer. Of course, in later days, when he became a solo artist, he would go out front and be with the guitar, maybe play drums on some things. They had to have another drummer with them. Because the Eagles, I feel like, were one of the earlier bands to kind of go out front and do like an acoustic set. And obviously, Don's not going to sit behind the drums for that. He certainly did. Once they got back together in the 90s, they did that quite a bit, and he would sit up front. And they should. And Glenn Frey was pretty open about it in the movie. He's like, there's a reason that I sang less and less as the albums progressed. We had Don Henley. And if you want your song to be a hit, let Henley sing it, and it's got a lot better chance.
He does have, and this is no knock against Glenn Frey, he has a very distinctive voice. When Don Henley sings, that's a Henley. So I know that's Don Henley. It's not like, who is that again? No, it's Don Henley.
But it's pretty and powerful. It's kind of got both. And some say it's kind of rough, it's raspy. I'm like, nah, listen to something off Hotel California, like Wasted Time. Listen to Wasted Time all the way through.
Yeah, okay.
Wasted Time, and some of it's kind of spare. They don't have a lot of noise in it. There's some air, some space in it. When he's just singing, and I think he does, well, his voice, it's really not much of an argument. He's got an amazing voice.
And I really like I Will Not Back Down, or I Will Not Go Quietly, with him and Axl Rose. That is, song's not the best song, but the 2 of them singing together is really cool. Yeah, like I said, if you've never heard the song before and you've never heard it one time in your life and the vocals come on, snap your fingers. He's got a very distinctive rock and roll voice.
No doubt about it.
If you had to especially later on, he is the voice of the Eagles. Once we get past this, once you get to Hotel California, he takes over, and he is the main identifier with the band.
The main attraction, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And they should have, quite frankly. If you got a guy who can sing like that, let him sing.
That's actually a pretty cool thing for Fry to say, that he understands, okay, listen, I can write the songs, but he's the one that's going to take us across the finish line as far as singing them. Because back to Hotel California, Fry only sings New Kid in Town. That's it. There's not even one other one. So I think at that point he was just like, run with it.
And so, all right, so it's 75. They've done one of these nights. It goes quadruple platinum in the U.S. It's huge. But Bernie Ledden is starting to get a little disenchanted, because he's more of a country guy, and they're getting a little bit more rock and roll. And so he's starting to not enjoy himself as much. There's a very poignant scene in the History of the Eagles movie where he's talking about it, and they let everybody talk. They let Randy and Don Felder and Bernie have their say on what happened, and Glenn Johns for that matter. Everyone who has ever worked with them, they let them have their say. And Bernie was pretty repentant about this. He said they're at a big gig and they'd just finished, and Glenn was basically playing I'm the leader. It's like, okay, here, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. We'll make a record, then we're going to do a big show, we're going to get a plane, we're going to da-da-da. And Bernie took a beer and put it and just poured it over his head like, you need to chill out, man. Yeah, and Glenn was pretty fiery. Glenn liked to fight. He fought with Randy Meisner, and basically he left the band. He was ready to kill Don Felder in their last show together in 1980, prompted Don Felder to leave the band, and the band broke up. So he's a pretty fiery guy. You can imagine the way Glenn felt about that. Now, in the movie, Glenn was actually kind of chill about it. He's like, he told the story. He's like, you need to chill out, man. But Bernie was repentant. He's like, I look back at that now as a mistake. Obviously I did that to embarrass him, and I'm not very proud of myself from that moment. And it paid off, because that repentance let him get onto the History of the Eagles tour, which Randy was invited to join. He couldn't for health problems, but Felder was not invited. Once they kicked Felder out, Felder was out.
Yeah. And, you say that Glenn told the story. That's how many years later, though? I mean, I can imagine at that moment when it was just like, you see red, and you just, it's the vision of you punching through the back of his head.
Yep.
You would just want to kill him so much. And I think the other thing, too, is that once that greatest hits record came out, you went pretty quickly from kind of cruising on the side road there to now we're up on the highway. We're doing 90 miles an hour. This just they broke through into a whole nother stratosphere with this thing.
It's literally life in the fast lane, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Which I think had something to do with a conversation that Fry may have had with a provider of illicit materials when they were in the car. So then that's going to poke its ugly little head in too.
Yeah, apparently Glenn had a great way with a turn of phrase. Like they'd be down at the Troubadour or something like that, and they'd see these young girls who were down there being happy to be around them, but they had to split because, they already married some 50-year-old music exec or whatever. So they can flirt with you and kiss on you, but then they got to go home. And he would see, oh, look at those lion eyes. Oh, lion eyes, did. Or, he's in the car with a drug dealer going 90 miles an hour, zipping in and out of traffic while they're holding. And he's like, what are you doing, man? He's like, hey, life in the fast lane. He's like, oh, life in the fast lane. There we go.
Been up and down this highway. Haven't seen right. Yes.
So, all right.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, So Bernie's kind of a problem. Like, okay, let's ditch Bernie and we'll pick up Joe. Now, Joe can't really sing like Bernie. The harmonies are going to change. It's not that Joe can't sing. Joe has a very different kind of voice. Obviously, You can pick out Joe Walsh from anywhere, but it's not because it's melodic necessarily. It's kind of weird. But Joe's a pretty weird guy, so it fits him.
Yeah. The songs that Joe Walsh sings, it's kind of like a Bob Dylan or a Bruce Springsteen, where it's like if they sung something else, you'd be like, but you write your own songs, it fits perfectly.
Yeah.
And again, he opens his mouth, this, I've never heard this song before, that's Joe Walsh.
But it's also good. I mean, Funk 49, his voice fits it. I love his Turn to Stone song. I think that Turn to Stone song is cool.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to get Joe in, and obviously they need some time to round him into the band and then get to recording some stuff. And Felder had rented a place by the beach and kind of had this kind of Jamaican thing that was that he just kind of recorded. It was a guitar piece in there, and he sent it to Glenn and Don to see what they can come up with, because they're the songwriters, right? And when they got to that, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, what's this here?
I can imagine that was probably not the only thing it was probably, here's a couple of ideas I've got. Yeah. And it's just like that, ba, 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 and then wham, ho, 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 ho. Yeah.
And it was Hotel California, like the haunting intro to Hotel California. Now you hear Glenn and Don talk about, especially Henley. He likes to talk about the lyrics. And you weren't the only one to compare him to the Beatles. He's like, yeah, the meaning of the lyrics is kind of become I am the walrus. I'm like, did you really just compare yourself to Paul McCartney? Did I hear that right, Henley? It's, but to me, the cool part, the lyrics could mean different things. You could interpret them different ways, that's for sure. But to me, the coolest part about the song is the guitar part. Yes, the haunting kind of intro and rhythm part that kind of leads through the song. But then when Walsh and Felder basically duel at the end with their solos, that's the coolest thing in rock and roll, man. It's an amazing, amazing song.
And let's be real honest. Most people who probably are not even rock and roll fans, if you played them that intro, the first couple of bars, they would know Hotel California. Everybody knows Hotel California. That song was so gigantic. Yeah, and then you got the intro part, you got the lyrics, which may or may not be. I am the walrus. And then, that part at the end, like you talk about, like one of the coolest back and forth in rock and roll. Yeah, just that, to see the two of them play that is really cool.
And Simsek said, he's like, that was the coolest thing in my recording career. That was the coolest thing I was ever a part of. Those two recording their solos back and forth on Hotel California. I'm like, I believe it, man.
And doesn't Felder play the double neck, the Jimmy Page double neck? He's got the white double neck. I don't know if that's an SG. I don't know what the model is, but that's really cool too, to see that brought out.
Yeah, the way I understood it is they made the first one for Jimmy because he needed to play Stairway to Heaven and others on stage and didn't have time to be able to switch from a 12 to a 6 string. Mm-hmm. So they built the first one for him. But obviously it was so cool they were going to make more. And then, Felder, and he still plays it because he still tours. Yeah. And he's still got that double neck Gibson and does switch, he's the ringing part for most of the song. Then he goes down to the bottom for the solo when he starts to trade off with Walsh. And the two of them together, because Fingers is kind of refined, he's kind of right on the money, whereas Joe, he's playing with a lot of... He's
kind of the...
heart.
Yeah, if you want to talk about, they talk about Def Leppard, the old days of Def Leppard with Colin and Steve Clark, and Colin is the laser-focused precision meister, and then Clark is more the Jimmy Page, kind of staggering around. It sounds great, but it's sloppy, and I think you kind of got the same dynamic here. Walsh is, it wouldn't be the same thing, but the two of them together sound fantastic.
Great. So good, And so that was, and it wasn't even the first single off the record. I think New Kid in Town was the first single off the record.
I think you're right, which was an odd choice, but okay, no one asked me, but that's fine.
But perhaps part of it, that the reason that was the case was because the record company did not want to release Hotel California as a single with the long solo at the end, because that song is 6.5 minutes long, okay? 6.5 minutes long. And that's a little long for FM radio back in the day. It had to be like 3.5 to 4 minutes, maybe 4.5 minutes, something like that. But 6.5 minutes, no, that's crazy. You can't put that on the radio. And the record company even tried to say it. Even Geffen was like, yeah, we got to shorten this thing. And the Eagles, and there's precedent. Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult. You've heard it on the radio. They have kind of a cut down version when they slow down in the middle, and then there's the 6 solo, and then they bring it back at the end. They cut all that out for a single version, so it's only 3.5 minutes long instead of the 5.5 minutes of the traditional Reaper. So they're like, yeah, just cut it down. And the Eagles stuck to their guns, like, no, you can't cut the solo out. That's the song, man. And they
that's what would have gone.
Yeah, of course that's what would have gone. Keep the weird lyrics in there, keep the chanting in there, and then we'll get rid of the cool part. No.
And honestly, for 6:30 to go down to 3 and change, they might have even messed with the beginning too. Like cut that not out, but maybe way down, and that would have been terrible. But I think the thing is too that this was a kind of the turning point, or kind of a hard left turn with this record to be more hard rock, and also to kind of have a theme running through it. Mm-hmm. Here in my 14-year-old with a 13-year-old was talking about Hotel California and saying, well, what do you think that's about? And I'm like, well, it's lyrics. It can be about anything. And he just said, I think it's about drug addiction. And I'm like, well, I'm not saying you're wrong. It could be. I think the whole thing is, kind of the excess and getting famous and you want this thing, and once you get in, you can't get out, and
Mm-hmm.
it might not be the greatest thing on the face of the earth. There's going to be an ugly side to it. Band is changing, I'm sure, from the greatest hits to this. All of a sudden now the money is exponentially more, and that just starts to pick at people too. Those who are getting paid less, this is turning now into more of a business. Hey, we used to just be guys having fun, writing songs, out on the road. Now this is a huge business. This was going to be even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, watch out. Oh, I always wanted to be famous. Good luck.
Yeah, and then, of course, when they added Felder, it went from everyone gets a 25% stake to everyone gets a 20% stake. Ooh, now those songwriting credits are all the more important. But they did, look, they got together with each other on this record. Felder wrote the music to Hotel California and Victim of Love. Henley and Fry wrote the lyrics. JD jumped back with Glenn and Don for New Kid in Town. Joe Walsh's Life in the Fast Lane, the riff, that was a warm-up riff. That was something he did. It was like a rub your belly and pat your head thing for him. Something he used to warm his fingers up. And Glenn's like, what's that? Dude, what is that? He's like, well, something I got, man. There you go. And off he went to write Life in the Fast Lane, Wasted Time was Henley and Fry, along with The Last Resort, which was certainly not going to be a single at 7.5 minutes. But Joe Walsh got a song in there. Obviously, Joe had written his own songs before he was in the Eagles, so it made sense that he got something on there, and Randy got one on there. So a lot of give and take, push and pull, fighting, arguing, all that stuff. But that's how you get the best stuff out of them, right? If everyone just does what you tell them to do, maybe it wouldn't be as good.
Or if there was just one guy writing all the songs, you're going to get some duds in there. But yeah, when you have so much to pick from, you can refine it.
Exactly. It's kind of the same story that happened about the same time, I feel like, with Kansas on Dust in the Wind. Kerry Livgren, who was one of their lead guitarists, was at home one night. He's in the dining room, and he's basically, I think he might even be on a 12-string, and he's doing something to kind of warm up his fingers, which is basically the melody to Dust in the Wind. And his wife says, oh, that sounds good. You should write a song around that. And he's like, no, woman, that's not a song. That's me warming up my fingers. You don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, no, idiot, I'm hearing that, and that sounds like a good song, and you ought to write around it. So it just goes to show you out there, fellas, even when your wife is dead wrong, she's absolutely right. So just get that into your head, and you will have a longer, happier life. Or at least you'll stay married, one of the two.
Correct. You won't have frying pans thrown at your head. Victim of Love is on side 2. I always love this song. I think it's disgusting. It's nasty. It's about cheating on people. And the solo in it, it's not real intricate, but I always loved it for whatever reason. It's just a nasty song. And I think the solo goes along very well with it.
I'm with you. Felder is good. Underrated because he doesn't sing. Any guitar player who does not sing lead vocals, for whatever reason, does not get their due. Jeff Beck does not get the credit that Eric Clapton. It just doesn't work that way, for whatever reason, especially in America. And, of course, his solo records never really did a whole lot, so he was just kind of looked at as a guy in the Eagles. But to me, he was a really important part of the Eagles. He's the one who took them from country guys who sang songs to girls to a rock and roll band. And he wrote Victim of Love. Now, here's the thing. Because, Randy gets to sing on a song. Joe gets to sing on a song. Glenn Fry gets to sing on a song. He's like, I get to sing on a song. As you said, it's cool. Everybody gets to sing, right? Well, Felder doesn't get to sing. I think he did sing one song maybe on Best of My Love. But he thought, yeah, I'll sing this song. And they tried it with him. And they tried it with him. And it just wasn't right. So they got Irving to take him out to dinner one night while they sent Henley into the studio to sing the song. But the song absolutely would sound better with Henley on it. And it's one of those things like, this is the best thing for the Eagles. May not be the best thing for Don Felder, but it's the best thing for the Eagles. And I think Joe Walsh looks at it as that really put a craw into Felder. After that, he was a little bitter. He's like, I wrote these 2 great songs, at least the music, on this album, and you cut me off. But again, on that movie, History of the Eagles, very contrite. He's like, at the end of the day, there's no really point singing my vocal versus Don Henley's vocal. There's no point arguing anybody's vocal versus Don Henley's vocal. Of course, he had sued them and been kicked out of the band. He had time to heal, but the other guys hadn't, and they're still bitter about it. And Len Fry died without him and Felder being able to bury the hatchet, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, it is too bad because when they were on, they were obviously extremely on. And I think that is the big deal between having a band like this and having a band where you're just told what to do, because I could sing the song, you did sing the song, if we can do this better. And I think that's what you have to realize as a Don Felder is you wrote a great song, you gave it a try. Okay, kid. Just now go sit down and let the pro handle this.
Right.
And you have to be able to just take that and say, my feelings are hurt, but I understand, and take a back seat. And I guess he just couldn't. Now it could have been the way it was handled too that he was mad about. But obviously if they had to do it that way, they figured that if they asked him straight up, he was just going to throw a temper tantrum. So they had to do it that way.
Right. And in some ways it worked out, I guess you could say. Now, Pre-Made's All in a Row, I think his voice sounds good on this song. I think it's a nice song, and he does it very well.
And it's a nice change of pace, too. After Victim of Love, because he comes on, okay, here's something that sounds totally different. Walsh's voice sounds totally different. It's a cool song. It's kind of a cool song that, unfortunately, in the text of this thing, gets lost. If it had been somewhere else, maybe it would have been a bigger song. I don't know, but in the world of Hotel California, I don't want to say it's a filler, but they can't go toe to toe with the other songs.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compete with Life in the Fast Lane and Hotel California, and people like New Kid in Town. I'm with you. I think Victim of Love is a killer song, and you're right. It's not for kids. It's about disgruntled adult love
behavior.
Yeah, and then Try and Love Again with Randy. Again, Randy was the guy in the band who just wasn't type A. He just didn't want to fight. He didn't want to argue. He just wanted to play and then go party, and hoped everybody get along and be friends. But Try and Love Again is another nice, pretty. Randy's got the high voice, and it may not have hit home like Take It to the Limit did, but still, it's a good contribution to the record.
Yeah, and again, another nice change of pace with here's another voice I can hear. But the deal with my thought on Don Henley is that he can sing. He's got a great voice. But there isn't a lot of, I don't want to say range because that's not the right word, but there isn't a lot of, he always sounds like Don Henley. So it's cool to have another voice in there. The song, it fits again, he's got the high register. It's kind of cool. Again, if this had been somewhere else, maybe, but in the world of Hotel California, it's a second side song.
Right. And to me, The Last Resort, there are pieces of it. It's long, and it's the last one on the record. And if you had the tape, you were probably going to fast forward it so you can get to side one and get back to Hotel California again.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, you've been through a lot on this. There's a lot of big songs. This is a slow down. It's a 7:25 marathon. Yeah, you're like, man, I wish I could hear Hotel California again. Fast forward, boom.
So February, early in '76, they put out this greatest hits record. That's huge, and it makes sense. I mean, a lot of people were probably casual Eagles fans, like, oh yeah, I like a couple of songs, but I'm not going to buy all four of their records. Right? But then you put out a greatest hits. It's got all their best songs. Like, ooh, yeah, I will pick that up. My last three girlfriends love the Eagles, and I'm going to have that around for when we go making out at the Point or wherever you like to make out. So that's early. And then at the end of the year, you get Hotel California, which is easily the best record they ever did. And it sold something like 25 million copies in the United States and 40 million worldwide. Only reason it didn't win, album of the year is because Rumors came out the same year, which also sold something like 25 to 35 million in the US and 50 million worldwide, something like that. But think about that, Jackson. Little known fact is Eagles' Greatest Hits Volume 1 is the biggest selling album in the history of North America, certainly in the 20th century. And then I think Thriller passed it in the last 20 years, but then maybe the Eagles passed it back again. And it's something like 50 million copies or something crazy like that.
Well, and I think the thing was, too, you had so they put out the long run in 80, and then that was it.
79.
And they were back
79.
together. 79, okay.
Yeah.
And then they got back together, and they did the Hell Freezes Over. And I think when that happened, I would be very interested to see the sales uptick then, because everybody, I think, collectively went, Oh yeah, I know these guys. Hey, wasn't that right? Yes, boom, and then so back again. So yeah, it's insane to me to think of just, hey, yeah, how many copies. Like I said, everybody had a copy of this somewhere. You had
Everybody
it on
did.
a record. You had it on a tape. You had it on an 8-track.
That's
Maybe
right.
I don't know, but yeah, everybody had it.
So in '77, they're touring on Hotel California, but they also have this huge greatest hits album. They're literally selling millions of albums a month. Forget a quarter or a year, they're selling millions of albums a month. And they can play stadiums, football stadiums. They don't have to play arenas, they play football stadiums. And so they're minting money. They have their own planes. They're dating movie stars and Stevie Nickses and, all sorts of fun stuff you get to do. All the sorts of the best providers from Bolivia and Colombia come to see them, and they're happy to see them. And it was really life in the fast lane. You got to be kidding me how much money they must have been minting in '76. 77, 78.
Yeah, and to have that, I don't turn of fate or, twist of fate or whatever, because they probably always sold records. But yeah, to have that like just turbo blast of those two back to back, yeah, I'm sure they were seeing checks. This can't be real. Like, this can't be a real amount of money that I'm putting in my bank account now. Yeah, and hurry up, because here's another one that you got to cash again. You're going from, in a bus with everybody on it in Topeka, Kansas, to flying on your own plane. And yes, you're right. You've got all your favorite providers of illicit things there for you 24 hours a day. No one's telling you no. And you've got all the money you could ever know what to do with. Yeah. Hello.
So it cemented their legacy. Now, look, eventually they made the long run, which they call the long one, because it basically took them 2 years to record it while they were just doing all the blow they could get their hands on, and they're all wealthy. But also during this time on the Hotel California tour, they basically kicked Randy out of the band because Randy didn't want to sing Take It to the Limit anymore, because it's too hard to hit that high note, and if your voice creaks or cracks out, it's not going to sound good. And Fry's like, what are you talking about, man? It's not up to you. I don't want to sing Peaceful Easy Feeling anymore. I've been doing it for 7 years, okay? We have to do it. That's our job. There's thousands of people who've never seen us play tonight and tomorrow night and 3 nights after that. We got to sing the hits, man. And eventually he had enough. So he split. And then that's when they brought in Timothy B. Schmidt. And really the only album that he was on during the Eagles' heyday, at least studio album, was The Long Run. And he did have that nice song, I Can't Tell You Why, was a pretty big hit.
Correct. And it's crazy, because if you caught up to the Eagles, in the Hell Freezes Over era, you would have thought he was there from the beginning. Yeah, he was really only there. The lineup that you saw was really only one album. That was it.
That's right. Now, he did a lot of Hotel California touring with them, and then he did the one album and then did that tour. And then he's been with them ever since they got back together in 1994. So, and some of these, the Disco Strangler and the Greeks Don't Want No Freaks, and some of these songs are not that good. Like 2.5 years, and this is what you came up with.
Yeah, but the thing is, no matter what was going to happen, it was going to be a letdown. You were not going to match Hotel California, and I think perhaps they had that thought in their mind, like the next one's going to be, okay, God, I want something even bigger. Well, it's not going to be bigger than that. But still, you had The Long Run, I Can't Tell You Why, In the City. I like that song.
Heartache Tonight was a big hit for them.
Heartache Tonight is big, yeah. So it's not a bad record, but compared to Hotel California,
no, yeah. Look, I love Those Shoes. Felder wrote that with Henley and Fry. And it's kind of got that talk box that Joe Walsh can do, and Peter Frampton and Jeff Beck kind of made famous. And it's kind of a deep track. It's one they play on rock radio that I really like. Not a huge hit necessarily. The other thing is, of course, the record company, they couldn't get it to them fast enough, right? Joe Walsh is like, they didn't care if we farted and burped on the record. They would have put it out. It was just, when can we have it? When can we have it? Because their whole quarter was based around, well, we're going to get a new Eagles album. And that's going to go double platinum. It's going to ship double platinum, right? So as soon as we get it.
Yeah, they had a built-in sales. Even if you'd never heard one track on this, there were people that would have lined up at the Peaches to say, I'll take it as soon as you get it. As soon as you get it in the door, I will buy it.
I'll buy it, right?
I don't care. Yeah.
And it did
So,
fine.
yeah,
I mean, 7 million in the U.S. alone compared to the 26 or however many million of Hotel California. Yeah, it's a little bit of a letdown, but nobody would turn down a 7 million selling record. And that's just the United States. That doesn't include everywhere else,
I was going to say that their line of bands around the corner that would do anything to sell 7 million records or 7 million copies of one records, and this was 7 million coming off of 30-something billion. Yeah, it's not too shabby.
So then, but yeah, of course, they famously broke up in 80 rather, with Glenn Frey threatening to kill Don Felder after the show. Felder storms off, busts his guitar, everybody breaks up, goes their separate ways, and they release Eagles Live, which I did have on cassette, which I wore out my senior year of high school in the car. But then that was it for 14 years. Obviously, they had various solo careers, and we talked a little bit about Felder's contributions to the heavy metal soundtrack in episode 4.
And I think that was the problem, is that both Frey and Henley had not giant. I mean, Henley was bigger, I think, than Frey and
Absolutely.
solo. I mean, he did solo, but they both did well enough where it was like, you know what, I don't need these guys anymore.
That's right.
I can go out, I can play, I call all the shots, I make all the money.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. And so I think that's what really hurt them too, is that they were too successful on their solo careers to even probably think about doing that.
And it gave them the power when they came back together to say, listen, I, Glenn Frey, and he, Don Henley, we get double shares. The other guys get single shares. Because without us, there are no Eagles. We founded the band. We wrote all the songs. We have solo careers. We kept the Eagles going in our solo careers, and we cannot do this if we want. But if you want us to come back in, we get double shares, and they all get single shares, which not only gives them more money, but it gives them complete control of the band. So if the two of them vote one way and the other 3 vote the other, it doesn't matter. You just lost 4-3.
And I mean, let's be real honest. Even if they couldn't get anybody else on the same page, if it was just Henley and Frey, they could have done something.
Yeah.
And then people would have got nothing. So at that point in time, if you're everybody else, you have to say, and I mean, Joe Walsh, he did some stuff, but I think he just kind of wanted to hang around. I don't think he was Mr. yell and scream, everything's cool. But if it was just the 3 of them, if it was, Henley, Frey, and Joe Walsh, they could have gone out as the Eagles and nobody would have cared. They would have just showed up to see them. So at some point in time, if you're everybody else, you have to say, you know what, this might not be the best bet for me, but it's all I'm going to get, so I'll take it.
Yeah, well, Tim Schmidt needed it, probably. What wasn't making big bank, earned a living, had a career, but didn't make big bank. Joe Walsh was in bad shape. By the time the Eagles got together, Irving Azoff and Don Felder had to drive him to rehab to get him clean. And then as soon as he was clean, it's like, okay, now you're back in the Eagles, which must have been very, very difficult for him because he was into cocaine and alcohol for so long. Then he'd been kind of on the side road for a long time, right? Opening for people, doing small gigs, just getting trashed. And now, okay, you're back in the very, very big time, white hot spotlight, and you're sober for the first time ever, in 25 years. That's got to be pretty tough to do.
Plus, they have what do they call that thing? The circle of death or circle of something where they all sit around and they play the songs. And if you're deficient, you're not playing right, you're not singing right, they're going to find out and they're going to kick you in the head. So not only is it this big tour, but you need to be on. You need to be perfect for them to approve. And I've heard, I can't remember who said it, one of the other guys was like, yeah, that's intense because there's nowhere to hide.
Right.
You're either you know the song and you can play it or you can't.
Don't. Right. Well, another thing that was the problem was, so Felder had gotten in and was a full share member of the band back in the early 70s, right? By the time Bernie left and they brought Joe in, he wasn't necessarily a full member of the band. He got paid well for road, but he wasn't maybe a member of the Eagles Corporation. And Tim Schmidt came along even later and wasn't necessarily a member of the Eagles Corporation. So it was the 3 of them. 1980 when they broke up, the Eagles Corporation had 3 partners, Glenn Frey, Don Henley, and Don Felder. So if anyone should be getting a big share, Felder figured, well, I should too, right? Because legally, I still am 1/3 of this entity. In fact, I'm the CFO because someone had to be CEO, someone had to be president, someone had to be CFO. He's the CFO. He's like, if I'm supposed to be approving all these checks, mine should be as big as the other guys. And Glenn's just like, sorry, no, it's not the way it's going to work. And Felder wasn't going to join. He's like, this is a problem for me. And he basically said, sign it today or you're out, And then Henley and I have 2 shares each, and Walsh and Timmy will have 2 shares between them, and we'll get somebody else to play your parts because no one's going to miss your voice. And Felder's like, okay, correct. I'm in. I might not be super happy about it, but I'm in. And he wrote a very interesting tell-all called Heaven or Hell, Life in and Out of the Eagles, which is a really good read. I think that really made Don Henley mad because it showed some of what went on backstage. And Don Henley thinks his whole life should be private. I'm like, sorry, Henley. He's like, oh, I can tell you stuff about Don Felder that'll make your mustache curl. I'm like, yeah. So you're not all saints, Henley. I tend to believe, and people remember things differently, and there's always 2 sides to the story. In a band like the Eagles, there's 7 or 8 of them. But I tend to believe, Felder's side of the story. And now, Walsh and Tim, they're not allowed to talk about Felder. It's an off-limits conversation. If they're in an interview, what about Don Felder? Will he come back in the band? They just defer. They don't talk about that.
Legally, I am not allowed to speak of him, but the thing that stinks and this goes all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, if you are not a singer, unfortunately, they can get somebody who plays the same equipment through the same speakers and is note for note perfect. The soul might not be there, but it's going to sound about the same. Right. And that really kind of stinks as far as your bargaining power.
Yeah, and so then Glenn died, which I figured would spell the end of the Eagles. But, hey, there's still money to be made out there. And now that, Glenn's double share is gone, maybe Don Henley gets the triple share. Tim and Joe get a single share. And then I don't know what they pay Deacon Fry, who's Glenn's son, who they bring along to sing some of his songs. And then Vince Gill, who is a star in his own right and a good guitar player. I would assume they pay Vince pretty handsomely, but I doubt he gets an Eagles share. I doubt Deacon does, but it's interesting
I don't
to
know how that works.
Yeah,
I would imagine you're right. And Henley at this point in time, this is a business to him. So you're right. He is now calling all the shots. And I don't know how Fry's will went, anything like that. But I'm sure he gets paid very handsomely. And so same with Vince Gill. But yeah, as far as like the day to day, now you're president, CEO, CFO, everything else. It's the Don Henley Corporation now.
And he could go out and be a solo artist if he wanted to, because he had a good solo career and had some big hits, and could then mix in the Eagles hits with his solo hits. But now that he's in charge, what's it matter? But why do that? You can charge a lot more for an Eagles concert than a Don Henley concert, so why not? Well, that wraps up the Wolves episode on the Eagles. Do you think the Eagles will play London this year? They're scheduled to, but will it happen? Will coronavirus let them? Not sure. Don't have tickets now, but hey, maybe you hear this, maybe you think there's one last chance to see the Eagles. This might be it. I hope they get out there and tour, and I hope we all get to go out and see live music. Next week, we're going to talk about a classic by the Rolling Stones. No, not one of the great big ones that everybody talks about from the 60s or 70s. I'm talking about our Rolling Stones album, the one me and Jackson came of age to buy, hear, and see them perform live, and that's Steel Wheels, the 1989 comeback album for the Rolling Stones. Until next time, guys, hey, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Let us know. Tweet us at ugly_werewolf and check out our past episodes at uglyamericanwerewolf.libsyn.com. Until next time, be cool and stay safe.